So first question, Dale, for you is in regards to enhancing election security and increasing transparency. Dale, your platform emphasizes the need to enhance election security by implementing cutting-edge technologies and protocols to protect against fraud and interference. Can you provide specific examples of the technologies and protocols you plan to introduce and how they will effectively safeguard our elections? Additionally, how will you increase transparency with the electoral process to ensure greater public oversight and confidence?
So people think that enhanced technology needs to be something new and innovative and creative, but sometimes less is more. We have the technology, and we've had the technology to count ballots effectively for thousands of years, and then these digits right here. So we really need to get back to basics and start hand counting ballots again, having rigorous audits, of our elections post-election, so that we can give the electorate the confidence that our elections are safe and secure. That's how we do that. This is nothing new. It's something we've been doing for a long time in the United States and across the world. The reality is that machine counting has actually slowed down the process of counting ballots, and hand counting was actually much more efficient at a precinct level. Unfortunately, that's not going to go away overnight. However, we need to secure our ballots and our votes by effectively auditing after every single election, whether that's a presidential primary, whether that's a special election. We must go in and conduct very rigorous audits of those elections to ensure that what's coming out of the machine is what we're counting by hand. I'm clarifying the second part of the question here.
Difficult hearing in the back.
Additionally, how will you increase transparency within the electoral process to ensure greater public oversight and confidence?
Do we have any election observers in here? Anyone? Okay. I don't know about in Clark County, but in Spokane County, when election observers get too close, they're told to back up, you're making people uncomfortable. I'm sorry, but voting is the most fundamental civic duty we have in our republic, and it has to be safeguarded. If you are being paid to count ballots, then you better get comfortable being uncomfortable. We have the right to observe and ensure that our elections are safe and secure. I'm going to put the auditors on notice that you cannot claim bullying without evidence. You cannot claim that people are dissenting and making people uncomfortable. That is not grounds for you to throw election observers out, and it always leans one-sided. We know this. So transparency is you get to do your job as election observers while they're counting ballots to ensure that the ballots are being counted properly, that the signatures are matching, and you should be able to call into question if you guys see something that ought not be passed. So if there's a signature you guys think doesn't match, you should be able to make a note of it and it should be reviewed. These aren't difficult tasks to implement. There's just certain people don't want to implement them, right? So these are very easy things that we can do and accomplish.
Thank you so much for being here. My question is for Sue. Sue, this is on the topic of creating jobs in responsible forestry and agriculture. Sue, your platform focuses on creating jobs in responsible forestry and agriculture. Could you elaborate on the specific policies and initiatives you plan to introduce to achieve this? And how will you ensure that these job creation efforts are both environmentally sustainable and economically beneficial? Additionally, how do you plan to support local farmers and foresters in adapting to these new practices and technologies to enhance productivity and sustainability in the long term?
I can speak better if I'm standing. Wow, that's a lot of good questions. So overall, my first answer is I'm a Republican because I believe in limited government. So the first thing I want to work on with agriculture is lessening the regulations that those poor farmers are having to deal with. Thank you. And one way I hope to achieve that is to have a really heart-to-heart discussion at the top levels of government about why do we have so many environmental agencies at the state level and the federal level, and the regulations have just gotten out of control. I want to really take an evaluation of how many different agencies have to tell this farmer what to do with his own land. I believe that landowners, and particularly farmers and forest owners, I think they're the best people to take care of their lands, and I think they're the most motivated people to take care of their lands. So I'm old enough to remember when we all may have thrown garbage out our car window, or, you know, done something that was not kind to the environment. I'm talking about when the Love Canal caught on fire because it was too polluted. Those days are over, and people have learned how to take better care of the land and the water. We're all pretty smart, and if somebody doesn't know and they do something that's not a good idea, we educate them. I really believe in the goodness of people and their intelligence. So I'm not sure I caught all of your question there.
Okay, how do you plan to support local farmers and foresters in adapting to these new practices and technologies to enhance productivity and sustainability long term?
Okay, thank you. So one of the key natural resources in any land use enterprise, whether it's farming or growing trees, is water. Water is so important to all of us, and our governments seem to keep working on taking away water rights in many different ways, whether it's a nonprofit suing a county who let a couple dig a well. I mean, there are people who really want the water to go all to the government. I disagree with that. I feel strongly that as far as our forests go, we have stopped logging. We have trees that were planted for harvest that were not planted. They're getting way too big, bigger than the space they were allotted when they were planted. Uh-oh, I'm out of time. I missed that yellow sheet. Okay.
You can continue that with, you can finish your answer too on the next question, no problem, Sue, you sure can. So just as a reminder, Dale is running for Secretary of State and Sue is running for Commissioner of Public Lands, just quick reminder. So Dale, second question to you. You highlighted the importance of improving accessibility to voting and strengthening community ties. What strategies do you propose to expand access to voting for all Washingtonians, including those with disabilities, language barriers, or living in remote areas? How will you work with local communities to understand and address their specific needs and challenges in this regard?
Well, first, it's not the right of all Washingtonians to vote, it's only the right of the citizen to vote, so I want to clarify. Secondly, we have a great example of this in Snohomish County. There's a gentleman running for legislature there called Sam Sim. He's a Korean American. He's broken barriers. The Koreans are coming out in droves, realizing they're not Democrats or Republicans. So we use that model. We get into these communities that are very Republican. They just don't know it. There's a language barrier. We need to utilize folks like Sam to get into these communities and say, guys, you've been lied to. You've been sold a bill of goods that isn't true. You are truly a family-oriented culture, like the Koreans, even the Chinese, the Japanese. They are very family-oriented cultures. So we need to engage with them and let them know there's a party out there who's willing to fight for these values. The other part, what was the first part? I apologize.
The need to enhance election security by implementing cutting-edge technologies.
Yeah. Well, no, that was the first question. Sorry. It was a long. Sorry, I apologize. I forget the.
The strategies to propose to expand access to voting. You just talked about language barriers, disabilities, living in remote areas.
Okay. So expanding accessibility. So there were 60,000 ballots that were returned because of in the presidential primary without the party declaration checked on the front of their ballot. Wow. That is stifling the vote. The Democrats like to talk about accessibility. Well, there were 60,000 people in the state of Washington who didn't feel like their Washington state constitutional right to privacy of the vote was being upheld, so they returned their ballots without checking the box. Their votes didn't count. That is not improving accessibility, that is stifling it. We absolutely must give those who want access to in-person voting the right to go and vote in person. And let's not conflate dropping a ballot at the auditor's office with in-person voting. It's not the same thing. The Democrats like to say, well, you can vote in person, you can go drop your ballot off at the auditor's office. They're just going to throw it in the pile. That's not what we mean. We want the community to get together, we want to go down together, and despite our differences, we're going to get together and go vote for those that we want to represent us in the state of Washington. That's how we're going to improve accessibility, expanding the way that we can vote.
Okay, Sue, I have another one for you here. Question 2, and this is on preventing forest fires and increasing revenue for public schools and services. Sue, is it true that only Sue can prevent forest fires? I had to, I'm sorry. Okay, moving on. Preventing forest fires is a critical issue in our region. What comprehensive strategies do you propose to reduce the risk of forest fires, and how will these strategies be implemented efficiently? Also, do you aim to increase revenue for public schools and services? Can you outline how your plans for responsible forestry and ag will contribute to this goal?
Thank you. I'm going to finish my last answer, which was about water and farmers. So trees are drinking up a lot of water, and we have way too many trees. This goes to answer the next question. The trees need to be thinned out. There's not enough room for all those trees to grow. So that's the first thing. The Democrats to call it selective harvesting. They don't like to call it logging either. They call it carbon sequestration. So they have new terminology. But they're going to be doing the right things. In 2020, when I ran for this office before, I had the opportunity to debate with the incumbent 8 different times by Zoom. It was during COVID, so we had Zoom debates. And all the other statewide races only got 1 debate. So I got 8 debates with the incumbent who's leaving this office. And I just hammered on her. She was all about hiring more firefighters, getting more airplanes to spew the fire retardant all over the land. And I said, no. We need to prevent the fires. Prevention. I hammered on the concept of preventing forest fires. So one of my very simple ideas, which she embraced, ultimately, my ideas ended up in House Bill 1168, and it was passed unanimously the next session in Olympia, unanimously by the House, the Senate, and Governor Inslee signed it. I don't even know of any other bills that were passed unanimously. So I am super proud to have had some influence on that bill. And then the legislature funded $500 million over the next 10 years to implement those ideas. So that's one thing I've done. And all of my competitors, I'm very pleased they've all embraced all my ideas from 2020, and that's great. However, I keep looking forward, and this is the thing I really want to emphasize. I gave this tip to the incumbent, but she didn't do much with it. She reached 0.04% of the people in Washington with information about how to prepare your property, whether it's a home, in the suburbs or a ranch or a forest. I said, teach people how to prepare their property to prevent fires. And she made a little effort on that, but I'm going to take that to town. I am going to spread the word in National Ad Council, in utility bills. I really want the whole state to understand this is not a problem that the Department of Natural Resources can possibly solve without everyone's help.
Last question is the same question for both Dale and Sue. You'll have 1 minute to answer, and we all appreciate each of you stepping up to run and accurately represent our majority voice. So we want to give you 1 more minute each to be able to communicate to everyone why you should earn their vote.
The incumbent, Steve Hobbs, has now done 2 things that are violating your constitutional rights. The first thing, he's contracted with a foreign intelligence firm called Logically AI to surveil all social media posts, all news media posts. So anytime you comment on social media, on news media about election disinformation, misinformation, and emerging election narratives, he is getting a report about it. Secondly, we just found out that he is currently removing the 30-day residency requirement for Washington State, which is actually Article 6, Section 1 of Washington State Constitution says you have to have a 30-day residency requirement to vote in the state of Washington. He is trying right now to abolish it. I just had a press release today. I will stand for your guys' constitutional rights. I come from a country that doesn't have the First Amendment. It must be cherished and protected at all costs. I will go to the Secretary of State's office. I will fight for the right only for the citizen vote, and I will ensure that we are protecting our constitutional rights and freedoms in Washington State and in this country.
Well, I am the only candidate in my race for Commissioner of Public Lands who has 30 years of professional, actual working experience in natural resources. I've had a wonderful career. I couldn't have asked for a more fun professional life. I got to study salmon. I grew up at a salmon hatchery, just up the river here. And I learned about forest management, habitat restoration, salmon harvest. I was salmon harvest manager for a point in my career up on Puget Sound. I worked at Seattle City Light as a senior environmental analyst, and I was in charge of 12 agencies and their permits for the city was building a new hydropower plant. So I have a very broad range of experience, and I'm the one who thinks outside the box, frankly. So thank you very much. Sue Pederson.